has been an enormous source of strength to our economy, and I will look forward to picking that up and elaborating more on its benefits to my riding. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Scarborough Rouge Park will have 7 minutes remaining in his speech when the House next comes back to this topic. Statements by members. The honourable member for Surrey Newton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to recognise the outstanding work of two great community organisations, the Central Association of Punjabi Writers of North America celebrated their 30th anniversary, whose members gather once a month to release their books and share their literary creations. Their dedicated members make invaluable contributions in preserving and promoting Punjabi language and Punjabi culture. I would also like to congratulate the Sanja Beda Women's Association on the success of their 13th annual breast cancer fundraiser. Held in my riding of Surrey Newton, the event raised thousands of dollars for the breast health clinic in Surrey. I ask all members to join me in wishing these two outstanding organizations continued success.
Honourable member for Perth Wellington.
Mr. Speaker, for 100 years, young people in Wellington County have been pledging their heads to clearer thinking, their hearts to greater loyalty, their hands to larger service, and their health to better living. As a former 4-H member myself, it was an honour to speak at the 100th anniversary of 4-H in Wellington County last Saturday night in Arthur, Ontario. For 100 years, Wellington County 4-H has proudly supported youth and agriculture using the hands-on philosophy of learning to do by doing. Whether learning a new skill, developing leadership skills, or making lifelong friendships, 4-H in Canada has created a lasting legacy for generations. Congratulations to Wellington County 4-H on a century of preserving our agricultural heritage and protecting our rural way of life. And thank you to all club members, leaders, and alumni for all you have done for agriculture in Wellington County and in Canada. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Lac-Saint-Louis.
This coming Sunday, Tony DeGennaro would have begun his third term as councillor for Brunswick in the city of Kirkland. Sadly, this summer he was taken from us suddenly. Tony was a conscientious and deeply hard-working people's representative. As Kirkland Mayor Michelle Gibson so rightly said, he was a model councillor, the one you want. Tony was close to his constituents, curious about their views and attentive to their concerns, always listening with an open mind. His business experience and community service were invaluable assets to Kirkland City Council. The last time I saw Tony, he had just completed an evening of door-to-door and was heading into his favourite place after home, Café Maurizio. He had a spring in his step because meeting and talking to people was what he loved to do. We send our deepest sympathies to Tony's wife Helen and daughter Melissa. May they find comfort in knowing that the love people had for their husband and father and the high esteem in which he was held.
Honourable member for South Okanagan West Kootenay.
Mr. Speaker, later this month we will be debating my private member's bill C-354. This bill calls on the government to consider wood when building federal infrastructure, applying a dual lens of lifetime cost and greenhouse gas reduction. We are witnessing a revolution in the architecture of large buildings around the world. Tall wood buildings that are beautiful, safe, and cost competitive. This government loves innovation, and Canada is at the forefront of this mass wood innovation in North America. Government procurement will help our industry thrive and stay ahead of the curve. Secondly, this government made commitments in Paris to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. Much of that footprint is in our buildings and how they're constructed. The carbon captured in wood could significantly reduce those emissions. And finally, building with wood will support our forest sector. Unfair softwood tariffs in the USA have hit this industry hard, and expanding our domestic markets will help workers across this country keep good, well-paying jobs. So I ask everyone here to support Bill C-354. Thank you.
The honourable member for Alfred Pellan. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Over the last 11 years, nearly 930 journalists have been killed for attempting to cover the news and keep the public informed. 9 out of 10 cases have gone unpunished. These numbers don't include the many other journalists who have suffered torture, arbitrary detention, kidnapping. intimidation, harassment, and sexual assault. All of society suffers from this impunity because access to reliable, high-quality information is the cornerstone of any democracy. That's why the UN declared November 2nd International Day to End Impunity for Crimes Against Journalists. So I'd like to pay tribute to our journalists here and abroad whose work promotes fair and inclusive societies. And I'd like to recognize our government's efforts to support the freedom of the press and the safety of journalists.
Honourable Member for Souris Moose Mountain.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to take this opportunity to highlight an outstanding constituent who's done some great work in my riding, Haley Wall. Haley is running a new program for children and youth in Weyburn through the Special Olympics Organization of Saskatchewan. The Active Start program is for children ages 2 to 7 and teaches them basic motor skills, while the Fundamentals program will build on those skills for children ages 7 to 12. I have always been a huge supporter of Special Olympics. In 2018, this organization is hoping to expand their reach and impact among youth by 16%, and will be asking the federal government for funding to help meet that goal. I strongly encourage the government to do whatever possible to make this happen, as these incredible athletes, coaches, volunteers, and families provide a tremendous benefit for all Canadians. I'm so proud of all those who participate in the Special Olympics, whatever their role might be, and I'm especially proud of Haley Wall for the outstanding work that she has done for the youth in Weyburn. Congratulations, Haley.
Yeah. Honourable Member for Scarborough-Guildwood.
Mr. Speaker, it's my honour to rise in the House today to recognize the nomination of Jan Rowan for the Samara Everyday Political Citizen Award. At age 12, Jan received 1 shilling for Lent. And much like the good and faithful servant in the parable of the talents, Jan felt the challenge to increase its value by helping the less fortunate. That shilling grew into 8 decades of social justice work. Jan has been a Girl Guide and Cub Scout leader. She's raised money for Ronald McDonald House, Cancer Society, and United Way. As a raging granny, she used song to enhance public awareness. As a union leader, Jan walked picket lines seeking fairer wages and working conditions. In the 2015 campaign, Mr. Speaker, at age 85, Jan out-canvassed and outworked many people many decades or younger. Jan is truly an everyday political citizen and much deserving of this recognition.
Honourable Member for Pontiac. Mr. Speaker, as you may know, next Sunday there will be municipal elections in Quebec. In Pontiac on November 5th, 41 mayors, 243 councillors, and 2 reeves will be elected. And there are also more than 500 residents of Pontiac who have decided to run for office.
All candidates for their participation, for reminding us that all politics truly are local, especially in the Pontiac. I also want to remind everyone of the importance of voting. Municipal elected officials deal with issues that affect us in a concrete and direct way every day, be it urban planning, the local transit, local road networks, and recreation. However, the participation in the last Quebec municipal elections averaged at 47% last time. Alors, permettez-moi donc.
So allow me to encourage all voters in Quebec to exercise their democratic right to vote this Sunday. Let's not do things by half measures. Let's do what we need to do to exercise our democratic right to vote.
For Caribou, Prince George.
Mr. Speaker, I'm proud to be attending the 70th Annual Ontario Psychological Association's Public Service Awards event this evening. The ceremony honors those who have contributed greatly to improving conditions for the most vulnerable amongst us. The OPA itself has been recognized at the highest level for groundbreaking work with Canada's military heroes. Today, I'm pleased to announce that my bill C-211 has received second reading in the Senate. But, Mr. Speaker, more work is needed. Just as we witnessed in this House, the support of all of our Senate colleagues is needed to ensure that we see my legislation through. Tonight, as I attend the OPA event, I will carry the message that we are all working collectively to see 211 gets passed as quickly as possible, and that we all recognize that lives depend on it. Every day I'm touched by the stories of those who are suffering, those brave enough to put a face to my bill. I'm deeply committed to honoring their bravery, their strength, and their perseverance as we work together to ensure those who need help get help. Thank you.
The honourable member for Oakville North Burlington.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today marks the start of MAD Canada's Holiday Awareness Campaign, Project Red Ribbon. I'm pleased to welcome MAD Canada to the Hill today from their base in Oakville to celebrate the campaign's 30th anniversary. For 3 decades, the Red Ribbon has represented a commitment to drive sober during the holiday season and is a tribute to the innocent victims and survivors of impaired driving. From November through January, MAD Canada distributes red ribbons and asks Canadians to wear or display them as a symbol of their commitment to always drive sober. This red ribbon reminds us all that the deaths and injuries caused by impaired driving are 100% preventable. We can all do something to stop them from happening. I was honored to sponsor today's Project Red Ribbon launch on the Hill, and I ask everyone to join me in wearing a red ribbon for safe and sober driving.
Yeah. Honourable member for Hastings, Lennox and Addington.
Mr. Speaker, no relationship is as important as Canada's relationship with Indigenous peoples. Our government is fully implementing Jordan's Principle using the definition and scope suggested by the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal. We have approved approximately 20,000 new service requests for children under Jordan's Principle. More than 99% of the requests received have been approved. We are continuing to identify as many First Nations children in need as possible and to ensure that they receive care quickly. At the end of the day, this is about closing the socioeconomic gaps between Indigenous and non-Indigenous children in Canada. We will continue to work with First Nations partners to build capacity in communities and identify more children in need to ensure that we are putting the health and safety of children first. Thank you.
The honourable member for Markham Unionville.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today, 100 students from Allen Fairclough Public Elementary School in my riding of Markham Unionville are based in Ottawa. I had the opportunity to attend the Remembrance Day service with the students and the teachers before arriving here today. We are forever grateful for Canada's veterans and their sacrifices. The generous services of Canadian Armed Forces members during time of war and peace have helped define and shape our country. I am thankful I was able to honor those who have served our country and thank those who serve in uniform. I hope the students from Allen Fairclough Public School leave Ottawa today with a greater interest of appreciation for our veterans and civic institutions. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member for Mississauga, East Cooksville.
Mr. Speaker, I'm happy to rise today to celebrate a very special day for over 1 million Polish Canadians. On November 11th, we celebrate Polish National Independence Day, commemorating the anniversary of the restoration of Poland's sovereignty as the Second Polish Republic in 1918. Our two countries share common values of freedom, peace, and democracy, and fought side by side during the D-Day invasion to liberate Europe. Polish Canadians have made a remarkable contribution to our social, economic, and political foundations in Canada. Mississauga is home to over 30,000 members of the Polish diaspora. In honor of this day, it's my pleasure to invite all my colleagues here in this House to join us this evening at the Sir John A. Macdonald Building as we welcome Poland's new ambassador to Canada. Witam to Ambassador Kornicki, and I'm looking forward to seeing everyone tonight. Dziękuję bardzo.
The honourable member for Skeena-Bulkley Valley.
Mr. Speaker, I am proud to represent the beautiful northwest of British Columbia. Some of the proudest, strongest, and most ancient First Nations have made this territory home since time immemorial. Despite insidious and bad faith policies from the federal government that continue to this day, the First Nations I'm proud to call friends continue to struggle for justice and economic sovereignty. Just two examples. Today in Terrace, British Columbia, the Nation to Nation Summit is showing leadership by bringing together government, industry, and First Nations leaders to create opportunity and success for all the people in the Northwest. It is also shown in the leadership of the Nakazli Nation, who are creating safe housing opportunities for their people. Far too often, First Nations stories are only told when the tragedy of colonialism is manifested. I am privileged to witness the tireless and dedicated work that benefits not only the First Nations of the North, but all Canadians. Thank you very much.
The Honourable Member for Barrie Innisfil.
Mr. Speaker, OPP Sergeant Kerry Schmidt said it was one of the worst crashes he'd ever witnessed in terms of absolute carnage and destruction. Late Tuesday evening, 14 vehicles, including 2 fully loaded fuel tankers, were involved in a major crash near Cookstown on Highway 400. It's being reported at least 3 people died, including a father of 9 from North Bay. I trust I speak for all members when I say to the families who have lost loved ones or those who were injured, please know you have our deepest sympathy and that you're in our thoughts and prayers. And Mr. Speaker, thank you to the many first responders who answered the call and acted so quickly and professionally. Events like these can be traumatizing. To all involved, first responders on scene and those who witnessed this terrible event, it's okay to ask for help. Reach out to someone sooner rather than later. Talk to colleagues, family, and friends. There are mental health professionals ready to assist if you need the help for the healing to begin. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Ottawa West Nepean.
Yesterday, the government announced the launch of the National Action Plan for Women, Peace and Security. This plan will ensure that women are involved in all aspects of the peace process.
Nations passed Security Council Resolution 1325, committing to include women equally in peace processes. Gone are the days when warlords met behind closed doors to divide the spoils of war and call it a peace agreement. Women are not an add-on, but central to peace building. Women are not just victims of violent conflict, but the solutions to sustainable peace.
We know that when women are fully involved in the peace process, there is more community mobilization. Peace agreements last longer.
All the women who are or have been military and civilian peacekeepers, and all the women who risk their lives so that our daughters and sons can live in peace and security. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Questions orales, oral. Questions the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the Ethics Commissioner said clearly that a number of ministers are using the same loophole as the Finance Minister used to hide assets. The Prime Minister, though, says that the Finance Minister is the only one to do so. So the question is simple. How many other cabinet ministers are using that loophole, and who are they? The Honourable Finance Minister. Mr. Speaker, I know the member may have a problem with numbers, but what I can say is that it's less than 5. That's the number. We want to continue working with the Ethics Commissioner because that's the way our government makes sure that we don't have any conflicts of interest. That will continue to be our approach, to work with the Commissioner, because that's the method we have here. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Speaker, maybe the minister can help us out. Am I getting warmer or colder? It's more than 1, but less than 5. Is it 4? Is it 3? Is it 2? Why can't this minister just answer simple questions? Yeah. Who are the other ministers and how many are there?
Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday in this chamber, I had a member of the opposition come over to me and tell me not to take it personal because what happens here is just a game. Yeah. But what I can say, Mr. Speaker, is that for our government, it's absolutely not a game. Yeah. We are working to improve the lives of Canadians. Yeah. And what I can say is for those 300,000 children who are being lifted out of poverty, for their parents, it's intensely personal. They care about our country and they care about their family. Mr. Speaker, we will not play the games of the opposition. We're going to work on behalf of Canadians.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, nobody here thinks that it's a game to expect ministers to be held accountable and to be open and transparent. But there have been some ministers who have been playing a game. It was called hide the assets. Right. And in the case of the finance minister, it lasted for 2 years. Right. Now, all the opposition wants to know, all Canadians want to know is who are the ministers who are using similar loopholes, how many are there, and when did the Prime Minister know that this was going on?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, the member opposite is wrong, and he knows he's wrong. I disclosed all of my assets to the Ethics Commissioner and will continue to work with her. We will not play the games that they're playing. We will continue to work with Canadians.
I would ask the honourable member for Carleton and others to listen to the answers as well as, of course, to the questions. But we need to hear both, and as Speaker, I need to hear whether people say things that break the rules. So therefore, we need to listen. The Honourable Minister of Finance has the floor. The rules of the
Mr. Speaker, as I said, we won't be playing games. We will focus on Canadians. And for the member from Regina Capel, we know that for the 16,090 children that have received the Canada Child Benefit, on average $700 per family, it's not a game to them. It's helping their family. That's what we're working to do, and we will continue to do so.
Leader of the Opposition.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I would be happy if the minister could tell me how I'm wrong. Am I wrong when I say that the minister hid his assets for 2 years? Is the Ethics Commissioner wrong when she says that there is more than one minister but less than 5? Are Canadians wrong to expect a little bit better from this finance minister and this prime minister? So once again, simple questions deserve simple answers. Who are the other ministers that are using the same loophole that the finance minister used?
Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I can say that, yes, the member opposite is wrong when he says that I didn't disclose all my assets. I worked with the Ethics Commissioner, as all of us on this side are committed to doing. We will continue to do so. What I can say, though, is Canadians were right when they decided to elect our government, because they knew that we would focus on them and not focus on playing games that weren't any advantage for them or their family. Happily for them, our country's in a much better situation with higher growth and better situation for families across this country.
I have to ask the honourable member for Brandon Souris to remember not to speak unless he has the floor. I know he's got a great baritone voice, but I only want to hear it when it's his turn to speak. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, Mr. Speaker, if I'm wrong, then so too must be the Ethics Commissioner who fined the Finance Minister for not disclosing his assets. Or was that some kind of a compliance fine that she issued to him? So I guess my last question to the Finance Minister would be, if he actually did disclose his assets for the past 2 years, will he be asking for his $200 back?
Honourable Minister of Finance.
Well, Mr. Speaker, what I can say to the member opposite is wrong again. What happened here is I disclosed all of my assets, and in fact, there was an administrative error that we satisfied the Commissioner with a $200 fine, which I paid. So, Mr. Speaker, we are trying to work to help Canadians not play the games that the members opposite are trying to play, because we know that that's what we were elected to do. So for all those Canadians who looked at what we announced last week, the level of growth our country is seeing, the improvements we're going to make in the Canada Child Benefit and the Working Income Tax Benefit, we're going to tell them that we're working for them, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Rimouski-Neigette-Témiscouata-les-Basques. Mr. Speaker, failing to strike the right balance for transparency. That's the punchy title of the Information Commissioner's report, which shows the Liberals are breaking yet another clear election promise to subject staff in the PMO and other ministers' offices to the Access to Information Act. Bill C-57 could have done the job, but it falls far short. Why is the Prime Minister backing down from open and transparent government? The Honourable President of the Treasury Board.
For more than 30 years, we are the first government to modernize the Access to Information Act, and we are applying it to ministers' offices through proactive disclosure. I understand why the NDP do not like proactive disclosure, because when we were in opposition, and the Prime Minister was leader of the Liberals in the opposition. When he led the charge on proactive disclosure of MPs' expenses, the Conservatives signed on to it quite quickly, but the NDP were dragged kicking and screaming to disclose their expenses to the Canadian public. They didn't like proactive disclosure. They don't like it today, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member for Skeena Bulkley Valley. Order.
This coming from the party of the sponsorship scandal, Mr. Speaker. The Information Commissioner dropped a bombshell yesterday. The Liberals' new No Access Information Bill, C-58, will make things even worse than they were under Stephen Harper and Jean Chrétien. Ethics, cash for access, open government, all promises made, all promises broken. From the sponsorship scandal to missing and murdered Aboriginal women and girls, all of this came to light through access to information. So will the minister listen to civil society, immigration groups, First Nations, and fix this bad bill?
The Honourable President of the Treasury Board.
Mr. Speaker, we are proud to be the first government in more than 30 years to modernize the Access to Information Act. And I want to be very clear on a specific issue the honourable member raised, and that was in terms of Indigenous peoples. Let me be very clear that we would support an amendment that would require departments to seek approval from the Information Commissioner before refusing a request. This would ensure that broad requests would not be refused simply because they were broadly applied or in their descriptions. We want to ensure that this modernization of access to information strengthens the regime, and we are open to narrowing the application of this clause.
Honourable member for Skeena Bulkley Valley.
And exactly, nobody in First Nations communities believes what that minister just said. Liberals seem to have invented a whole new game. It's called ethics bingo, Mr. Speaker. How many Liberals have secret numbered companies that they haven't told Canadians about? Is it one? Oh yeah, there's one. Is it two? Oh yeah, at least two. Three? Tell me when I get to the right one and we can all yell bingo together. Enough with the games. Here's the PM's own instructions to his ministers. You must uphold the highest standards of honesty and impartiality, and the arrangement of your private affairs should bear the closest public scrutiny. When are they actually going to live up to those words? Or are they just meaningless and they're written on the paper?
Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I can tell you that our government is committed to living up to the highest standards. That's why we're working with the Ethics Commissioner to make sure that in all of our situations that she understands all of our assets. That's why we're taking her recommendations, as we all have, in order to move forward and ensure that none of us have conflicts of interest. We know, Mr. Speaker, that that's the way that we get to do the work that we were hired to do by Canadians. And that is working to continue to grow our economy, make sure we have a fair situation where people get the benefits of that growth. That's what Canadians are seeing. That's what we'll keep doing.
The honourable member for Rimouski-Nejet-Témiscouata Basque.
Force the bare minimum that it should be following.
The Prime Minister is dismissive of this House's calls for explanations of his ethical shortcomings and those of his government. But the facts are clear. The Prime Minister is still under an investigation over his trip with the Aga Khan. The Commissioner has identified up to 5 ministers who are using this loophole. She also said she was concerned about Bill C-27 and the Finance Minister's role in it. This government said it wanted to raise the ethical bar. Why not at least do the bare minimum? The Honourable Finance Minister. Mr. Speaker, we are going to keep working with the Ethics Commissioner. We know it's very important, and that is why we decided that for us, the way to be sure we don't have any conflicts of interest is to work with her, and in that way, we can get down to work, the important work we do for Canadians. That's our approach, and now we have the highest level of economic growth and the lowest level of unemployment in years. It's a great situation for Canada and for Canadians. Honourable member for Richmond-Arthabaska. Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Prime Minister said, and I quote, the opposition is levelling baseless accusations. Today the Liberals are accusing the Ethics Commissioner of giving false information about the situations of their own ministers. I have to wonder who's leveling baseless accusations against whom around here. My question is simple, Mr. Speaker. Why did the Prime Minister mislead Parliament and all Canadians when we know the Finance Minister did break the law on conflicts of interest? The Honourable Finance Minister. Mr. Speaker, As I said, yesterday I spoke to a member from the opposition who told me this isn't personal, it's just a game here in the House. To us, this isn't a game. This is important for Canadians. We know that 300,000 children are no longer living in poverty. For their parents, that's very personal. So we are going to continue to work with Canadians to improve their situation and the situation of our country. That's our goal. The honourable member for Richmond Arthabaska. Mr. Speaker, Canadians' confidence is not a game. The minister's right about that, but the minister is playing games with their confidence. For 3 weeks now, the Prime Minister has kept on saying he has confidence in the Ethics Commissioner. Now that she's saying there's more than one, 2, 3, 4, 5 ministers using the same loophole as the Finance Minister to hide their assets from Canadians, all of a sudden the Prime Minister says the Commissioner's wrong. So my question is simple. Are we to take it? Is the Finance Minister actually in a conflict of interest? And when did the Prime Minister know? The Honourable Finance Minister. Mr. Speaker, as we've said, it's very important to work with the Ethics Commissioner. That's what we've done. We have a lot of respect for her because it's an important approach that our government takes to make sure we're not in a conflict of interest. And we're going to continue operating in this manner because that is the right way to get down to work for Canadians. It's really not a game. It's very important for families all across the country.
For Milton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, since the Finance Minister has been exposed for hiding his assets in numerous multi-numbered companies, the Ethics Commissioner has stated that there are up to 5 other ministers that may be doing exactly the same thing. Now, there's an unnamed senior government official who has decided to refute these claims, suggesting that the claims are actually wrong and her office is not correct in what they're saying. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to know this. The minister talks about trusting the Ethics Commissioner. Is there a senior government official over there who will actually say that there's no other minister in the same position he put himself in?
Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, we know on this side of the House that some of the members of the opposition have a tough time counting. What we know is that number 2 is less than the number 5. What we can say is that there is 2. One member who divested all of the assets 18 months ago, and another member, myself, who's divested his assets most recently. So it's quite clear, it's up there on the website to see. We will continue to work with Canadians and not play these games.
Order. I'd ask all members to try to be careful about using things that cause disorder, and we know that everyone here can count very well. So let's not suggest otherwise. Order. That's enough. The honourable member for Milton has the floor.
Mr. Speaker, one thing that we can all agree on is this Minister of Finance needs help in one thing in counting. He better count on getting some better communications advice. Commissioner, the Prime Minister said this week, I'm not trying to blame the Ethics Commissioner, I'm trying to trust the Ethics Commissioner. That is what the opposition needs to do. Well, Mr. Speaker, that's exactly what we are doing as well. And after weeks of misleading and memory lapses, the Government of Canada has shown that they don't trust the Ethics Commissioner, but I think Canadians actually do. So the Minister put himself in a direct conflict, and he broke the law when he failed to disclose.
Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, thinking about counting for the member from Milton, there are 25,630 children in her riding who are getting, on average, in their family, $520 more through the Canada Child Benefit. Those are the numbers that we know matter to Canadians. With respect to working with the Ethics Commissioner, we will continue to do so because we know that's the right way for us to fully allow us to do our work, exposing all of our assets, which all of us have done, including myself, working with her and taking her recommendations to make sure we can get on with the important work that we're doing for the people of Milton.
Order. Order. The honourable member for Stormont Dungas, South Glengarry, I'd ask him to restrain himself and be assured that it's done evenly for everybody in terms of time. The honourable member for Thornhill has the floor.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister told the House yesterday that Liberals trust and honour the work of the Ethics Commissioner. The Prime Minister has been telling us all week to trust the Ethics Commissioner. Now the Prime Minister's office is telling us she is wrong about the number of Liberal ministers using conflict loopholes. Well, Mr. Speaker, we trust the Ethics Commissioner. Just how many ministers, Mr. Speaker, have gamed the spirit of the Conflict of Interest Act?
Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I'm delighted to hear that the members opposite trust the Ethics Commissioner as we do. We have worked with the Ethics Commissioner to make sure that we can ensure all of our situations are fully exposed and that she can provide recommendations for us on how we can ensure we don't have conflicts of interest. I can say from my standpoint that was an important exercise to ensure that I don't have conflicts of interest. Mr. Speaker, we will continue to do that. That allows us to get to the work that we want to do on behalf of Canadians.
Order. The member for Thornhill.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is blaming everybody but the Finance Minister or himself for the scandal that's before us. The Prime Minister is all but directly blaming the Ethics Commissioner. Blaming the Ethics Commissioner, Mr. Speaker, for the Finance Minister's several inexcusable lapses of judgment, for the Prime Minister's own willingness to look the other way. Mr. Speaker, why is the Prime Minister misleading Parliament about other ministers' actions? Is the Prime Minister's office calling the Ethics Commissioner a liar?
Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, again, we have the highest respect for the Ethics Commissioner and will continue to work with her to make sure that her work, which is so important, can continue to be done in a respectful way. That is our approach. We know that the approach to disclosing all of our assets to her is important. Taking her recommendations, which we've done, is important, and that will allow us to continue to help all Canadian constituents across the country, including those that live in the members' constituencies across the aisle.
Now, a member for Laurier St. Marie. Mr. Speaker, Bill C-47 on the Arms Trade Treaty has many defects. For example, it doesn't set any firm legal limits on the Foreign Affairs Minister's authority to approve arms exports. And it doesn't cover arms exports to the U.S. 50% of our exports go to the U.S. Experts have attested to this before the Foreign Affairs Committee. My question is, will the government accept amendments to this bill, or better yet, scrap it and start over from scratch? The Honourable Foreign Affairs Minister. Mr. Speaker, we are keeping our election promise to deal with this issue, to regulate the arms trade, including illicit arms trade. This is essential. C-47 would introduce and formalize in regulation the criteria to be taken into account before an export permit can be authorized. Like all regulations, Canadians will be consulted in their development. Thank you.
Laurier St. Marie.
Now, a member for Laurier St. Marie. Mr. Speaker, in order to sign on, you have to respect the treaty.
Of the bill to implement the Arms Trade Treaty. 2 detailed reports have been issued that insist that the government's bill C-47 does not reflect either the spirit or the letter of the treaty. Nothing in this bill would prevent future arms deals with human rights abusers. So I ask the minister again, will the government amend this bill or withdraw it and start over?
Here, here. Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, I am proud to assure members of this House and all Canadians that we are delivering on our campaign commitment to join the Arms Trade Treaty. Tackling the illicit trade in weapons is essential for the protection of people and of human rights. C-47 would put into regulations the criteria that must be considered before authorizing export permits. As with all regulations, all Canadians will be able to provide input into developing these criteria. Thank you.
Honourable member for Barrie Innisfil.
It's actually laughable, Mr. Speaker, to hear the Finance Minister talking about counting, because the thing he's been counting since he became the Finance Minister is a mountain of cash that he's made off of Morneau Chappelle shares and dividends. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister does have a problem. He either agrees that the Ethics Commissioner is right that the Finance Minister broke the law, or he disagrees with her and says everything is fine. He can't have it both ways. He can't suck and blow at the same time. The Finance Minister has been found guilty and fined by the Ethics Commissioner. How could the Finance Minister betray the trust of Canadians?
Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, we will continue to work with the Ethics Commissioner. We believe that's important. It's important also to focus on how Canadian families are feeling right now. They're seeing the highest growth rate they've seen in a decade. They're seeing over 450,000 new jobs created over the last couple of years. They're seeing the lowest rate of unemployment that they've seen again in a decade. This is a good situation for Canadians. We know there's much more to do. That's why we said we're going to index the Canada Child Benefit 2 years in advance. That's why we're putting in place an increase in the working income tax benefit. These are important things to help our country move forward.
The honourable member for Beauport, Côte-de-Beaupré, Île-d'Orléans, Charlevoix. Who's telling the truth, the Ethics Commissioner or the Prime Minister? Since I have no confidence in the Prime Minister, I'm going to go with the Commissioner, like they've asked us to do every other time a Liberal scandal has surfaced over the past 2 years. But we see right through the Prime Minister's self-serving strategy, using the Commissioner to divert attention away from the real problem, the Finance Minister and everything he's hiding. Why is he defending the indefensible, and what is the Finance Minister hiding in his numbered companies? The Honourable Finance Minister. Mr. Speaker, our strategy continues to be to improve the situation of Canadian families, improve the situation of the middle class in our country. That's what's important. That's why we've done things like the Canada Child Benefit, which helps out 300,000 Canadian children. It's improved their situation. That's why we created the working income tax benefit for Canadians who face significant struggle. We will continue to work for Canadians, Mr. Speaker. I would call on members not to heckle, and when they don't have the floor, to be quiet. The honourable member for Carleton.
Minister thinks he can make difficult questions about his secrets go away by lashing out personally against those asking those questions. Earlier today, he made belittling comments about our deputy leader and others who are simply doing their jobs. The only thing that will make these questions go away is for the minister to finally answer them, Mr. Speaker. This minister was hiding $20 million of Morneau Chappelle shares in only one of his holding companies. Can he please tell us what else is he hiding in his other holding companies? Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, as I've said to this House, I believe it's important that we work with the Ethics Commissioner. That's important. And that is, in fact, exactly what I did. So by exposing all of my assets, 100% of my assets to the Ethics Commissioner when we came into office, I was able to get recommendations from her on how to best move forward to avoid that I didn't have conflicts of interest, like the other members of our government have done. We know, Mr. Speaker, that that's the way that we get to do the important work for Canadians, and not to play games or go for personal attacks that really don't advance the cause of any Canadians.
The honourable member for Carleton. Listen, I know the Finance Minister is getting irritated by the process of accountability around this place, Mr. Speaker, but he did not reveal all of his assets to the Ethics Commissioner. He kept hidden his offshore company in France, and that's why she found him in violation of the law and required he pay a punitive fine. Now he's hiding other assets within different holding companies. He could make these questions go away if he'd simply tell Canadians what is he hiding in his vast network of numbered companies and trust funds. Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, perhaps the member from Carleton doesn't actually know what an asset is, but all of my assets were exposed to the Ethics Commission. What I can say, Mr. Speaker, is that we continue to work on behalf of Canadians, and we will continue to do so. So, Mr. Speaker, for the member opposite, the member from Carleton, what I can say is for the more than 16,000 children in his riding that are getting the Canada Child Benefit, an average of $430 per family, we are proud that we were able to help those families. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I encourage all members to please not question the intelligence of the members or their ability to understand basic concepts. Order. Alors.
Order.
Alors.
Order. The Honourable Member for Salaberry-sur-Oise. Mr. Speaker, the Minister for Youth has boasted about providing better opportunities for young people when actually his government is spending $19 billion less than 40 years ago on youth programs. This is absurd when we know that more young people with a post-secondary education, there are more young people with a post-secondary education, but they are poorer than 40 years ago. There is clearly no lack of need. Funding for studies, increasing food insecurity, for example. When will the Minister of Youth finally walk the talk and support youth? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary for Youth. I can tell you that we are very proud of our historic investments in young people across the country, beginning with historic investments in our summer job program. We invested historic sums and increased by 50% in, for example, bursaries. Mr. Speaker, we invested $400 million in order to make sure that we were creating, for example, things like co-op programs for young people. We know how to invest in young people because we know they represent the future of the country, and that's what we'll continue to do.
Speaker, it's been exactly 1 year since Parliament ordered this government to stop defying the Human Rights Tribunal and immediately flow that $155 million shortfall in child welfare. And the government refused, saying it would be like throwing confetti. No, it's about protecting children. Like 12-year-old Amy Owen, who before she died wrote on Facebook, "I'm just a kid and my life is a nightmare." To the Minister, stop defending the same feeble funding formula for child welfare established by Stephen Harper. Why will the Minister refuse to flow that money that was ordered by the Parliament of Canada?
Minister for Crown Indigenous Relations.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the member opposite for raising this very important question in this House. We have contributed hundreds of millions of dollars to bringing equity for children in this country. As it relates to child and family services and the gaps that exist there, we recognize that we are facing a national crisis in terms of the way that Indigenous children are overrepresented in the child welfare system. As of this week, I have called for an emergency meeting of all appropriate partners, the provinces, the territories, Indigenous leaders in this country, First Nations, Inuit and Métis. We will get together and we will solve this crisis together.
Honourable Member for Coquitlam, Port Coquitlam.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was saddened to read today that the Leader of the official opposition has adopted Stephen Harper's approach to the opioid crisis. He is proposing that people with addictions issues should be arrested and incarcerated instead of being provided the help that they need to stay alive and work towards a healthy future. The fact that the Conservatives want to reinstate Stephen Harper's failed strategy is irresponsible. People with addiction issues need help, not incarceration. Will the Minister of Health please update this House on her efforts to address the opioid crisis and provide needed support?
The Honourable Minister of Health. Order.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my honourable colleague for his work and his tireless efforts in this matter. Like him, Mr. Speaker, I was extremely disappointed yesterday when I heard the opposition leader's outdated belief. Unlike the Conservatives, our government is actually supporting law enforcement where it matters. Rather than prosecuting those with mental health and addiction issues, we are disrupting illegal drugs at the border and diverting people out of the criminal justice system. And with Bill C-37 and 244, our government is taking a compassionate, evidence-based approach to reduce barriers to treatment and encourage innovative measures to prevent overdoses and save lives.
Honourable Member for Louis Saint-Laurent. Mr. Speaker, the Liberal Party is and will always be associated with the sponsorship scandal. The Canadians thought they'd understood, but they've understood nothing. The Liberal government is tabling a bill on access to information, which means that the excellent work of journalists means that there will no longer be able to have a sponsorship scandal. It's the commissioner who said yesterday that I took a second look at the request that exposed the sponsorship scandal, and it would not have met the criteria in the bill. Why does the Liberal government want to hide other scandals besides the sponsorship scandal? The Honourable President of the Treasury Board. The Conservatives promised to reform access to information, and they did nothing in 10 years. They were the first government in the Commonwealth to have been found in contempt. So we have no lessons to learn from the most secretive government in history. The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent. Well, maybe the President of the Treasury Board will have a lot more respect for the Information Commissioner, because here's what she said. She said that access to information reform is window dressing on part of the Liberal government who promised transparency when in fact the proposed changes will be a step backwards for citizens' rights. It's the Information Commissioner who said that. Is the Liberal government trying to hide other scandals beside the sponsorship one? The Honourable President of the Treasury Board. Mr. Speaker, we are the first government after more than 30 years to bring in reforms to access to information legislation, and we will work with the Information Commissioner in order to do so.
Let's be very clear. For the first time in history, our government is giving the Commissioner order-making power. For the first time in history, we are actually applying the Access to Information Act to ministers' offices, to the Prime Minister's offices. Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives did nothing to modernize the Act in 10 years. We're getting it done.
The member for Lakeland.
Mr. Speaker, the Finance Minister has placed the Ethics Commissioner in an impossible position, first by withholding information from the Commissioner, then by claiming that she supported everything he did, but she fined him for not complying with the Act. So instead of insulting MPs and insinuating that female elected representatives can't do math, why won't the Finance Minister just come clean and ask?
The Honourable Minister of Order. Order, or there'll be loss of turns. Order. The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to say for the record that I hold the Ethics Commissioner in the highest regard. We believe that it's important that we have an officer of Parliament that helps all of us here in this House to ensure that we can expose our personal assets and do it in a way that allows us to take recommendations on how we can assure that we do not have conflicts of interest. That's our continuing approach. I will continue to work with her as I have thus far. As I've said to this House, I've gone farther than her recommendations to make absolutely sure in my position that there cannot be even a perception of conflict.
The Honourable Opposition House Leader.
Well, the Finance Minister did not go further. He was fined by the Ethics Commissioner for breaking the rules. Absolutely. Instead of owning up to it, he's clearly irritated and throwing insults. I think the Finance Minister may need a little break at his French villa over the next few weeks. But, Mr. Speaker, seriously, this is a very serious issue when the Minister of Finance is hiding assets. A simple question, no insults, please. What else is the Finance Minister hiding in his other numbered countries?
Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, the answer is nothing. The answer is that I've exposed all my assets to the Ethics Commissioner. And what I can say, Mr. Speaker, for the record...
Order. Order. Members have heard the question asked. They need to hear the answer, whether they like the answer or not. And most members in all parties are able to sit through a question period like adults and not react to things that may be provocative or not. But let's let the rest do it as well. The Honourable Minister of Finance has the floor. Order.
And Mr. Speaker, what I can say is that, in fact, my state of mind is not irritated, but actually encouraged with the economy that we're seeing for Canadians. We've seen over 2 years a very positive change in our economy. We've seen in 2 years a very positive change for middle-class Canadians, for families across our country. That is what we're here to do. So we will continue to do the good work and not play the games that the other party is playing.
The Honourable Member for Kootenay, Columbia.
Mr. Speaker, marijuana growers in my riding of Kootenay, Columbia have formed a co-op to advance their rights. They are concerned that the government will not license growers who farm outdoors and that licensing will go only to large corporate indoor growers. And indeed, Liberals on the Health Committee already voted down an NDP motion to allow provinces to develop production regimes that would support local economies. As the government moves to legalize recreational use of cannabis, will they stand with and support economically important small-scale outdoor farmers across Canada and ensure that they have a future? Yes or no?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister.
Mr. Speaker, our government has introduced a comprehensive framework for the strict regulation of the production, the distribution, and the consumption of cannabis. We've been working collaboratively with our provincial and territorial partners. Health Canada administers a very effective system of licensing for those who meet the requirements of that regulation to ensure that what will be consumed by Canadians is of known potency and purity. Those rules are important for the health and safety of all Canadians, Mr. Speaker, and we will continue to promote them.
Honourable Member for Courtenay Alberni.
Mr. Speaker, today on the eve of the one-year anniversary of the Hanjin cargo ship debris spill in my riding, I tabled a motion to address coastal debris. Still, community groups are leading cleanup efforts without any help from this government. Government officials have indicated, quote, there is a near complete legislative and regulatory void for coastal debris cleanup and no dedicated fund. The Liberals love talking about their world-class ocean protection plan, but nothing is happening. Simple question, will the minister create a permanent, dedicated annual fund for coastal debris cleanup?
Honourable Minister of Transport.
Mr. Speaker, my colleague is right. We are very proud of our Oceans Protection Plan, which now has approached its first-year anniversary, and we have announced over 50 measures. With respect to ships that lose cargo, it is very clear that they are responsible for the cleaning. That is the situation with the Hanjin that my colleague is referring to.
The Honourable Member for Carleton.
Earlier today, the finance minister said that our deputy leader can't count, when in fact he's the one who's 100% over his promised deficit levels.
Right.
He said that others don't know what assets are when he's the one who just forgot to report his asset, an offshore company in France, to the Ethics Commissioner. Mr. Speaker, instead of lashing out at others, why doesn't the finance minister just let go of all the secrets and tell Canadians what he is hiding in all of his holding companies?
Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, earlier today, I was speaking to the member from Milton. I want to be clear that I wasn't questioning her numeracy skills. I had the highest respect for the member from Milton, who I know who's had a positive business career. What I am questioning, and what I would question the member from Carleton, is the numbers that he's actually focusing on. In his case, I think the numbers he should focus on are the more than 16,000 children in his riding who are getting the Canada Child Benefit. On average, $520 per family. This is what we're doing for Canadians, Mr. Speaker. We're making families better off so that they can actually move forward to have confidence.
Order. Order. The member for Carleton.
The only way to know if he's making Canadians better off, instead of just making himself better off, is just to reveal what investments he has held over the last 2 years in his vast network of holding companies and trust funds. We just recently found out that he was taking $65,000 a month in dividends from a company that he simultaneously regulated. He introduced a bill that would help that company. Mr. Speaker, the only way to put all of this to bed and put an end to these questions for the minister is for him to come clean and tell us what he's hiding in those companies.
Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, to repeat, we have a process in this House that we work with the Ethics Commissioner so that we can expose all of our assets to her. And that is, in fact, what I've done. So, in terms of disclosure, 100% disclosure is the highest number you can get. That's what I've done. That allowed her to give me recommendations on what we should do to ensure that we don't have conflicts of interest. That is what we expect all 338 members of this House to do. We will continue to respect the Ethics Commissioner. We will continue to work on behalf of Canadians, which is what we were in fact elected to do.
Honourable Member for Carleton.
Mr. Speaker, that minister hid an offshore company in France. And then he hid $20 million of Morneau Chappelle shares from Canadians. Now that Canadians know he held those shares because of investigative journalism, not because of his transparency, he has admitted that that wasn't the right thing to do, sold those shares, and is now saying he'll give back the ill-gotten gains. Mr. Speaker, we need to know what other inappropriate investments he might be hiding in his holding companies. Why doesn't he tell us what is in those companies?
Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, to repeat, working with the Ethics Commissioner is the approach we have in this House. It is to respect the officer of Parliament that has that duty. That's what we will continue to do. Mr. Speaker, it allows us to do the work that we've been asked to do on behalf of Canadians. We will not get distracted by the games from the other side. We will not get distracted by the personal attacks. We will continue to be focused on Canadians. That focus, Mr. Speaker, is working. Canadians are in a much better situation 2 years later than when they were when we came into office. So we will continue to do that good work on behalf of them.
Honourable Member for Scarborough Centre.
Mr. Speaker, Canada's story is the story of immigration. Those who choose Canada bring with them their unique culture, skills, and an entrepreneurial spirit that strengthens our economy. My family immigrated to Canada 18 years ago to build a better life for our sons. We sacrificed, we worked hard, and now I sit in this House as the member for Scarborough Centre. Can the Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship please update this House on how our government's historic immigration levels plan will continue the tradition of welcoming newcomers to Canada?
Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, j'aimerais remercier ma...
I'd like to thank my colleague from Scarborough Centre for her question.
To Canadians that we will fix the immigration system to grow our economy and reunite families and eliminate the backlogs that were left behind by the Conservatives. Our multi-year immigration plan is the most ambitious yet. It supports GDP growth, it attracts more investments into Canada, it creates additional jobs for Canadians, and it boosts innovation. We on this side of the House understand that immigration, together with a welcoming society, is what has made Canada.
The Honourable Member for Durham.
Mr. Speaker, the Finance Minister is the Honourable Minister from Toronto Centre, but it is not honourable to suggest that our Deputy Leader can't count. It's not honourable to suggest that our finance critic is obtuse. It is not honourable, Mr. Speaker, for that member to deny his own mistakes and his own omissions. When will that honourable member do the right thing and apologize to Canadians for his mistakes?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, what I will continue to do with Canadians is to listen to their issues, to make sure that we're addressing them, and move forward not only to ensure we have a high level of economic growth in this country, but that Canadians see the benefits of that growth for themselves and their families. That is what we've been doing for the last couple of years, Mr. Speaker, while the members of the official opposition have been playing games. We've actually been trying to work for Canadians. And the good news is it's working. With a higher level of economic growth than we've seen in a decade, with a lower level of unemployment than we've seen in a decade, we have over 450,000 more Canadians working. Jobs matter.
The Honourable Member for Hochelaga. Mr. Speaker, the mayors of major Canadian cities are sounding the alarm. 1 tenant out of 5 are spending more than half their income on housing, and 1.5 million families cannot find affordable housing. In Montreal, 25,000 families are waiting for social housing, and in Toronto, 58,000 community homes need immediate renovations. While we wait for the minister's announcement on the details of his housing strategy, will he commit to making the necessary investments to preserve and expand the social housing stock? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Issue on which I stand with prouder sense of commitment and accomplishment on the issue of housing. Not only in the first budget we doubled the amount of money going to provinces and our partners in the municipalities, but we have now committed to a 10-year program to create the first ever national strategy for housing. This is going to be a game changer. We have consulted widely with the FCM and the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. We have listened to their needs about repairs, about construction, about subsidy. We will be delivering the best housing policy this country has ever seen. I can only hope that party opposite does not vote against it once again.
The Honourable Member for Saint-Boniface, Saint-Vital. Mr. Speaker, As the Prime Minister has said from the beginning, no relationship is more important to our government than that with Indigenous peoples. That is why the Prime Minister announced that the Department of Indian and Northern Affairs would be replaced with 2 other departments.
Children end up in the child welfare system in Canada. We know the system is broken and we know the system must be fixed. Can the Minister of Indigenous Service please update this House as to what is being done to protect the health and the safety of Indigenous children?
Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the member from St. Boniface St. Vital for his question and for his leadership of the Indigenous caucus. I believe that all members of this House are disturbed at the disproportionate rates of Indigenous children in the child welfare system, over 50% by the most recent census. We have some of the highest rates of Indigenous child apprehension in the world. That is one of the reasons why I have called an emergency meeting along with Indigenous leaders. First Nations, Inuit and Métis leaders have asked for provinces and territories to come together with child welfare experts and advocates. We will find solutions and we will work together to promote prevention and family.
Honourable Member for Beauport-Limoilou. Mr. Speaker, it's no secret that the Liberals are centralizers. They centralize decision-making on economic development in rural regions around Toronto. They centralize political decision-making in Ottawa. For example, abolishing the political lieutenant for Quebec position. And now the government is going to centralize art by transferring archaeological artifacts from Quebec City to the National Capital Region. Can the members for Quebec City and Louis-Hébert ensure us that they will do everything they can to reverse that decision?
Secretary for Environment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Parks Canada primarily exhibits the objects under its care at Parks Canada administered national parks and national historic sites in every province and territory. In 2012, Parks Canada decided to build a purpose-built collection facility to ensure the sustainable care and management of the collection not currently on display throughout Canada. There are approximately 31 million artifacts under Parks Canada's care, and 60% of the collection is under threat due to inappropriate environmental storage conditions and lack of appropriate security. We're working to ensure the protection and preservation of the collection and its display throughout the country.
The Honourable Member for Joliette. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Moving artifacts like that to here is shameful. Now, under Bill C-63, we've learned that the government wants to bring in a new tax, a tax on pot. Now, this is a new way of just causing problems for Quebec and taking money and putting money in their own pockets. We know that Quebec is the one who's going to be spending money on the related health and safety costs. Mr. Speaker, will Ottawa commit to leaving the money in Quebec, or once again, will it fill its own pockets without doing any of the work? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Our government is working very closely with our provincial and territorial partners. There has been ongoing discussions with the provinces and territories about the appropriate taxation and price regimens to be put in place. That's part of an ongoing and important discussion, but that discussion has been characterized by close cooperation and collaboration between all parties, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Joliette. Mr. Speaker, I'm not convinced by that answer. If the government does not provide those health and safety services, then it shouldn't be taking the money. Now on another issue, we learned that there could be a challenge as soon as possible of Quebec legislation on religious neutrality. Quebec is the one with the right to decide on rules governing relations between the state and citizens. That's a fundamental right. Will the federal government respect Quebec's jurisdiction, and will it commit to not funding any legal challenge of the Quebec legislation on religious neutrality? The Honourable Minister of Canadian Heritage. Mr. Speaker, our position has always been clear on this. We will always promote and protect rights and freedoms because we believe in the importance of the Charter. But it is not up to the state to say what people should or shouldn't wear. We are considering the legislation, and I thank our colleagues for their support on this issue.
Honourable members, the presence in the gallery of Ms. Christine Moutonen, President of the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe Parliamentary Assembly. And now I believe the House Leader for the official opposition has the usual Thursday question, following which we have a question of privilege to be raised, and then 2 points of order, including one from her. The Honourable Opposition House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, if I would be able to, I would like to raise my point of order at this point before I go on with it. Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I rise on a point of order regarding some comments that were just made during question period. The Minister of Finance said directly that our Deputy Leader didn't know how to count. Our Deputy Leader has been a Member of Parliament here for 9 years. She has a law degree from Osgoode Law School. She has been a CEO. She clearly knows how to count and so much more. And I believe that these are some of the reasons why many times women don't want to get involved in the political process, because when maybe things are tough, insults like that, bimbo, you don't know how to count, you're not smart, you're a puppet, things like that are hurled many times at women politicians, women in general. I hope that wasn't what the Minister of Finance was trying to do, but I would like to give him the opportunity to apologize to our very qualified, very smart and very capable Deputy House Leader.